right, so we have a very, very, very special guest here today for the second Listen Up, You May Learn Something Today podcast. Kelly Stumphauzer. Kelly, if you kind of want to just, introduce yourself and tell us maybe a little bit about you. That I'm sure a lot of people around Cleveland, if you're involved in real estate, know who you are, but if you just want to kind of share a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm a veteran at this point. I've been around a long time, so there's a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, I'm a mom of three, and I got started a little later than most of you guys. I didn't get started I shouldn't say that. I got started in real estate investing in my 20s, but I didn't really get into business for myself until my 30s. But I currently am in the fix and flip space, and I own a turnkey firm. I'm also part owner of one of Cleveland's larger property management companies. I have a title company venture, and I'm working on two real estate related funds. One's a bridge fund, and another is basically a buy and hold fund. So lots going on now, but it's been many years of building that momentum. So
Nice, yeah, and I'm excited to kind of dive a little deeper into it. I know that you were recently featured, I want to say the Wall Street Journal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of scratched the surface on a lot of the accolades, that you were able to accomplish, and it sounds like such a short period of time. So that's why I'm so excited to kind of talk about that and get into that, mindset that you have and the motivation. And it's funny, I think the first time I met you was at Rick's event out in, I forget where it was. It was out towards Sandusky.
I was at CIC.
Yeah, CIC.
Yeah. That was the first time we met?
I want to say, yeah,
That's so
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because
Okay.
I remember coming up and talking about it because, Anoop was the one that introduced us. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that was the first time we met. And yeah, I've always, kind of followed your path and saw what you did and kind of, I don't know your exact numbers and maybe we'll get into it a little bit later, but, I kind of try to emulate you just for the simple fact you talked about it. Obviously, I know that, you're a mother of three and how just hard you work. And sometimes I feel like, man, I'm doing a lot, but again, I don't know your day-to-day activities, but your accomplishments that you are able to make just with, three little ones. I probably shouldn't say little ones anymore. I know that, a couple, they're a little older now, but, probably a lot taller than me. But it's just really nice to see how hard you work and just how much you sacrifice. And I'm excited to dive deep into that motivation and where that comes from.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Happy to talk about it.
Perfect. So I'll get started with the first question. What I ask every single person is, what motivates you?
Yeah, so for me, my motivation has changed as the years have gone on. It started, I lost a sibling, not to get into like the deep stuff right off, right? But it was very impactful in my life. I lost my youngest sister. She was only 29. So I had, I say it was, there was a blessing in the middle of like that tragedy, which is I had the opportunity to really understand the fragility of life. And I think when you really know that up close, you're like, wow, I have just like such a limited time on this earth to fulfill my greatest potential. And what does that look like? That was, a big motivating factor for me. And then the other, of course, were my children. As you mentioned, I'm a mom of three, and when I got started, they were very little, but, I had just gone through a divorce. So I was a divorced mom of three trying to figure out how I was going to support my kids and I. And, I wanted to fulfill my potential, not just for me, but also as an example for them. And so that was kind of my initial motivators, and those were big motivators.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, I think it's just been the snowball effect of seeing my own potential and realizing it and realizing my worth and my abilities. And that's just built upon itself as the years have gone on. So
nice. No, and you kind of touched on it a little bit too. I didn't lose a sibling or anything like that, but I, lost my mother at 13, and you don't really realize, how that impacts your life until obviously you get older. And, I do remember kind of that was that turning point in my life where I have two options. I can either kind of use this as a crutch, to, pity me, poor me. I lost somebody at, lost a parent at a young age, or I can use that as motivation. How does this person want me to live my life? And how can I honor that person? So I think that's, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I know it's obviously not easy, but it's nice too, because again, we all find motivation in different things. And I talk about that a lot too, as far as you can take any situation, and you can turn that into some sort of, motivator, or I want to, do well or better for this person. And, obviously you kind of talked about your kids as well as using that as motivation. So I'm excited for this next question here. Because I'm always curious on how people who are so highly successful and how they kind of do it. But how do you find motivation daily? I guess, how do you just every single day, you wake up and you're just, okay, I'm ready to take on today. I'm sure you have those days where it's, I just don't feel like getting out of bed. But, how do you kind of stay on that high level path of success, all the time?
For me, I think it started because I was blessed enough to have found my passion, right? Like real estate is my passion. People talk about it, but I really live it. I mean, I love what I do, so it's been very hard for me to separate my work from who I am in my life. And so it's not like I have to get motivated to do this thing. Like, this is my thing, right? This is what brings me energy and passion, and it's where I feel like my unique abilities are most aligned, and so I don't have to find the motivation. And I think that, at least what I've experienced in talking to people, is people struggle to find their thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But
definitely.
if you find your thing, you don't really have to be motivated.
True. No, that's true.
Because you're living your dream out.
Exactly.
And don't get me wrong, I have bad days, I get frustrated like everybody. But as a general rule, I feel so lucky to be living my dream. And
yeah. No, that's awesome too. And it's funny that you say that too, because I again talk about a lot of the finding your passion, and the analogy that I say is listen, if you can wake up every day and do what you love to do, it's a cheat code in life. And if you can wake up every day and do what you love to do and get paid for it, I mean, honestly, what else can you ask for? And I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? Like, a lot of people are doing something because of money, right? Like, I do this because for the money, and I just couldn't imagine myself doing something for 40, 50, 60 years every single day and not enjoying what I do and just living for the weekend. Okay, it's Monday, but I can't wait till Friday.
Exactly.
It sounds like you have a passion, just waking up every day and just, I can't wait to, see what today holds for me. And that's cool. And hopefully, you guys really are understanding, really what she's saying as far as, that goes. And I cannot stress that enough. We're all on this, earth a limited amount of time. Do what makes you happy ultimately is what I always try to stress. So that's really cool that you have that. Okay. So what has been your biggest accomplishment so far in life?
Oh, I mean, definitely I would say raising my kids, right?
Nice.
Because there's a quote I love, and it's like, the greatest work you'll ever do is within your four walls, or something like that. So
Nice.
I feel like, I have all these professional accolades, but it's just putting three amazing people out into the world that I think are pretty self-aware, and they're very successful, and they're kind, and they've kind of watched me on my entrepreneurial journey, which has also been paired with personal development, a ton of it, a commitment to that. And so I've been able to share so much of my development with them that, I never heard at a young age. And so it's really cool to see how that's impacting them. Professionally, I think it's just, I had to think about that. It's not one specific title or moment. It's this, I would say it's the trajectory of growth that I've had through a lot of really tough stuff, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, jumping one hurdle after the next hurdle. I've had a million setbacks, like anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, it hasn't been an easy climb by any stretch of the imagination. But it's kind of crazy, like, the more hurdles you jump and the more stuff you go through professionally, your confidence is fueled by overcoming.
Yeah.
And then that trajectory of growth is just crazy. So now I'm like realizing the benefit of like looking back and going, man, I survived this, I survived that, and now this is happening for me. So it's more, on the professional side, it's still happening, I guess.
Nice. No, that's cool. No, that's awesome. I don't have any kids myself, and but I think that that is cool to kind of raise. I always call them like little mini-me's, and set them off in the world. And I think just anybody who follows you and watches you, and, obviously I can only imagine, how you are as a professional. And I'm sure, obviously you're an amazing mother too. Just seeing their career path and their growth, with everything at probably such a young age, because I think they have such a leg up on just the average kid, just because most people aren't so, successful in business and different things like that. So it's hard to teach, your kids where, hey, be successful as a LeBron, or be successful as a, Jeff Bezos, when, they just don't have the blueprint where you're that living blueprint, so how to teach them, and, they're getting a firsthand, look at how hard it is, and I know you talked about the setbacks. So, that's really cool. That's really cool. And I know we kind of talked about, you're in the fix and flip space. If you don't mind sharing, just what your accomplishments were last year, as far as.
Last year was actually a slower year.
Okay.
We actually had to take a step back, and I tell people, like, I'm 20, almost 20 years in this business. Or I didn't do my first flip till. So I'm like 15 years in the fix and flip space. All right. And still 15 years later, I'm making mistakes.
Yeah. So
like, people need to understand that it doesn't matter. I've got a couple thousand houses underneath my belt, but you still are learning and growing and dealing with, mistakes and corrective action and whatnot. So anyway, last year was actually one of our slower years. And I am able to look at that and appreciate it, because I'm like, we had to take a couple steps back. We had purchased a ton of inventory, and as you know, the market was shifting. You're in the middle of COVID. You have labor shortages. You have material price volatility. You have just a bazillion things going on, right? But it was a really unique opportunity to really look at, reevaluate our systems, reevaluate ultimately, like, what are we doing, and like, is this the highest and best use of your time?
Yes.
So I mean, like, in terms of numbers, there are years that I've flipped a couple hundred houses.
Wow.
But it wasn't last year. Like, last year was definitely like, take a step back. We still did a lot. Big volume, and I don't know that exact number. But last year was take a pause and really, like, look at the system and make some adjustments. And now in 2023, right, it's like, I'm so clear because I took that time. So
nice. Okay. And so what was that kind of like aha moment where you realized, like, wow, like, okay, this is working. This is actually, I can do this, as, full time, or make a living off of this. In the fix and flip, did you have a moment in time where it was like, okay, this was the house that set me, over, or this is the house where I learned, or this was the moment when, the lender, maybe sometimes, that big break is finding just that right lender. What was kind of that aha moment for you?
Well, I had flipped. So before I went through the divorce and the kids were really little, I had flipped maybe like one house a year, two houses a year. And I knew it worked because I was like DIYing it. Like, I'm up on the cabinets painting, I'm moving, like, landscaping around and whatever. And I knew it worked. I wasn't making huge profits. But at that time, I was comparing my profits from doing one or two flips a year with like two little kids in tow to what I had been making in my professional career, spending 55 hours a week dedicating my life to someone's company, right? And I'm like, this clearly works. But when I went through my divorce and I'm like, okay, I gotta take this hobby and turn it into a profession. Like I have to really be able to support us. That's when I was like, I gotta make it work, right?
Nice.
Like I say this a lot, like back against the wall is a really good place to start, you know?
Facts.
Yeah,
Facts.
right. And so that, I mean, I knew the system worked. I had, like everybody, I'd read Rich Dad. I understood, like I loved the idea of, you know, cash flow. I knew I needed to reduce my expenses immediately so that I could like balance work life with my kids as they were little and like get this business off the ground. And it wasn't easy. I mean, I tell people like I struggled with high school math. I graduated from college with a social work degree. I had like zero business experience, right? I just knew I was drawn to real estate investing. I read Ron LeGrand, I'm reading Kiyosaki, and I was just like, whoa, you know, like my mind was blown. But I didn't really I had none of my own capital. And like I said, I had no business experience. And within, I'd say 4 years, about 4.5 years of when I got a divorce, I had built a 7-figure real estate company.
Wow.
And that's just like evolved into all these other things. And that was all driven by passion and wanting to make it work for my kids, and also just like not wanting to have to give up my time with them and being able to balance these two parts of my life. So
no, that's amazing. And it's cool too that you just, you know, kind of said at the end where it sounds like a lot of your focus was to spend more time, you know, with your kids. And yeah, I think sometimes we have that goal of, you know, hey, I want to make, you know, I actually just talked about this the other day, but I have this goal of, hey, I want to make X amount of dollars. And I think you need to kind of dive a little deeper into, well, why do you want to make X amount of dollars?
Money has never been my motivator. It's still not my motivator. Mine has always been about, you know, freedom. Time value, freedom. And my why. We started the whole conversation about that. And I think it's so important for people to establish what that why is. And then, you know, find what you're drawn to and what your unique ability is and where you feel that spark in your life. Because when you can align those two things, right, like a purpose-driven path and like what, you know, whatever you want, I say it's a God thing, you know, how your God-given talents and how they align with what that purpose is, it's like just unstoppable.
No, exactly. Yeah, you're saying a lot of, you know, very, not so much similar things that I say, but, you know, things that I talk about. And it's, you know, reassuring to know too that, like, you know, hey, I don't think the same way as you, but, you know, my mind, it kind of goes the same way as far as, you know, I talk about time freedom a lot. You know, that's so important to me. And you know, to me, what doesn't impress me, or, you know, somebody's wearing a Rolex or somebody's, you know, driving whatever they're driving, it's, you know, does that person have, you know, the time freedom to do what they want?
That's right.
And that could be anything, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean they, you know, just sit around all day and watch TV. You know, it could be they're, you know, married to their work. They really love working, but they're doing what they love to do.
Great.
And time freedom is so important. And that's what I always say I'm chasing after. I'm not, you know, one of my big goals is 20,000 passive a month. And I'm not chasing after that because of what $20,000 can do for me as far as the cars and the clothes and the, you know, things. It's, you know, I say ultimate flex is, okay, I just want to go to Vegas today, and I just drive to the airport and I just go to Vegas for 7 days. And I can stay in the Wynn, or I can stay in the Bellagio, or I can stay in these higher end hotels, because it doesn't matter, because I have the time and I have the financial, you know, ability to do that. And that's something that, you know, really drives me is that. So it's really cool that you talk about time freedom, you know, as one of your motivators, you know, instead of I'm trying to hit this, you know, dollar amount, which I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit, you know, more. So now, do you think you are reaching your full potential right now in life?
Yeah, I think that the last 6 months has been like this preparation phase, and I feel like this year is like pivotal. It's like so many big things that are happening. I'm almost in disbelief, honestly. So yeah, I definitely feel like I'm committed to that. I think that's a lifelong process, by the way. Realizing your potential is a lifelong process. There's no end game for me, and I'm not someone that's going to retire.
Nice.
I just, because I said I love what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lifelong thing. But I feel very good about the space that I'm in right now.
Nice. No, that's really cool. And when you ask anybody, and I've asked this question to a lot of people as far as reach your full potential, you kind of get very similar answers. But I think one thing that you touched on too, as far as you will never feel like you're going to stop working. It's something that I think you can't be taught, right? You can't teach somebody to want to be motivated or want more out of life. And I think we can always be a little bit better version of ourselves.
Sure.
And that's why that's such a good answer, as far as it sounds like you're never going to stop improving.
No, I'm a firm believer that it really starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, before you can become a successful person in whatever professional realm, it really starts with you.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of interpersonal work,
mm-hmm.
and I'm committed to that. That's a lifelong process for me too.
Mm-hmm.
But when people are like, "Oh, you're gonna retire, when are you gonna stop working?"
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the goal in life is to find something that doesn't feel like you're working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's like, "I've got to retire." Well, I don't have to retire because I can work from my phone on a beach or in a yurt or
exactly.
And I've done some crazy stuff, and I intend to keep doing that. So I don't really have this clear dividing line between work and life in general. So
no, that's awesome. And it starts with you. And it's funny too, because I talk about putting gas in your tank, right? But the analogy that I use with that is, you can pretty up a car, right? You can shine the tires, you can polish the hood, you can paint it, you can do all of these things, but the car doesn't go unless there's gas in it.
That's right.
And that's so important, talking about you personally, from not only a physical aspect, taking care of yourself and working out, but from a mental aspect too. Sometimes we forget that that's a big part, and mental health is huge in making sure your mind and body are mentally healthy. I think that's something that sometimes isn't really talked about a lot, because we focus on the physical attributes of ourselves, and we need to look a certain way. But if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to be very hard to open yourself up and be successful, because it starts with you. So
totally agree, 100%.
Nice. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you an either or question. Would you rather take $3 million today, or go back to high school with the knowledge that you know today? Like, reset, go back to, I think high school is about 13, 14. So the knowledge that you know today, go back to high school, or you take $3 million right now.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I loved high school and I love life, so I'd like to have more of it, but I can't imagine being in high school knowing what I know now. I was already I don't know, I think in some respects kind of wise beyond my years. I didn't act like it, but I was. So that was a weird conundrum for me. Yeah, it's a tough thing. Yeah, I'm not money motivated. So if you were to say, sure, I'd take $3 million right now. I could turn that into, into a lot of money, but it goes back to the, time value thing, right? Like, would you choose more time here on Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd take the $3 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So let me ask you this, because I'm actually very curious on this. Okay, $3 million hit your bank account right now. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you do with it?
So there's two things I'm doing right now. They're just initiatives that we're, sourcing seed capital for. Okay. So that's the first thing I do with it.
Okay.
Right? Just to get those endeavors off the ground.
Yeah.
I'll find that anyway, but that would fill the need in 24 hours instead of a month or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Nice. All right. So it kind of segues into it. You kind of touched on this, before. And but how much monthly cash flow would be enough for you to retire right now?
Well, I mean, I could retire if I wanted to. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not a materially driven person.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I like nice things, but I'm definitely more on the experiential side
Mm-hmm.
of things. Travel's a really big thing for me, and obviously that's costly. I've kind of figured out how to work that system with
Yeah.
like, credit cards and spend
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
business and whatever. I watched this. Did you watch the Netflix special, The Minimalists?
I have not. I have not.
Yeah,
No.
it was interesting. It was for me. It was kind of eye opening because I'm in a different part of my life than you, and having the kids and having the pets and having the big house and having all these things that I've been managing for many years, businesses and all this other stuff. It was really appealing to me. Kind of the idea of just like looking at everything you own and really assessing what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm gonna do this, but I thought about it. I'm like, it'd be kind of cool when the last one leaves for college if I just sold everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, do I really need a car?
Yeah.
Do I really need all this stuff? And like, got back to the basics and just did a lot more traveling. And so that's my very long, involved way of telling you, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that number is.
Okay.
Things have changed as as I've hit certain financial benchmarks.
Mm-hmm.
I realize how much less money I actually need.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I don't know.
I mean, definitely.
I have kids in one is in college and two are going to college, and there's certainly there's things that you want to invest in and save for and whatever. Mm-hmm. But just cash flow a month, it's all in what you spend. And
true. No, it's cool. It's funny that you mentioned that too, because I'm in an apartment now, and I had a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, either way. So, but I had a lot more space, right?
Yeah.
I had a lot more space and had a basement and I had a garage. And so you're moving to this and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, going from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom and, no garage and different things like that. But it is funny that it's like, wow, I realize, how much stuff I actually don't use.
Yeah.
From clothes, to just space, as well. It's almost like one of those things where if as a landlord, with my tenants, I always say, the garage just ends up being a, storage space, for people anyway. It's the highest and best use is obviously to put your car there, but half the time you go in there, it's just another storage space. So I definitely have to watch The Minimalist, but yeah, I encourage people too to take a step back and really, look at what do you utilize and what do you use and how much, and I've even, I actually kind of toyed around with the idea of, okay, I really like, how things are going with this, should I just get in a van and travel and just do this, for 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. And can I live in a van? That's something that I don't know, right? And something I've toyed with, but yeah, I mean, I've definitely thought, hey, can I really just live a minimalist life in a van with, I don't know, 10 pieces of clothing and, limited resources and, can I make this work?
Well, I think, I'm sure what you would experience would be so much deeper than if you just had a bunch of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I just have never been aligned with that. I tell everyone this story. I took my daughter, I take the kids on like graduation trips, and hers was
Mm-hmm.
kind of postponed because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a bunch of trips that were postponed or canceled altogether during COVID, which was no fun. But she and I went to Panama.
Okay.
And we were at this all-inclusive, and it was really nice, and it was all you can eat and all you can drink, and super nice beach. And we were there for like 2-3 days, and I was like, do you want to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
She was like, yeah. So I found this place. It's like a floating eco lodge in the middle of the Panama Canal. No running water, no plumbing. They had this Panamanian cook that would come and cook like authentic food, and you'd kayak and you'd sit out at night. There was no cell service, which was like crazy for me because I'm definitely addicted to my phone. No cell service. You could hear the howler monkeys at night. It was serious, like true minimalism. And that like was so impactful. Like our time there, what we got to experience. We're seeing monkeys and sloths and, kayaking with crocodiles and stuff. And I'm like, I would take that a million times over than all inclusive.
Wow.
And I just think I have that philosophy in life in general. Like, I really want to experience things like deeply, and that's not going to come by way of a Gucci belt.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah. Understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. For me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, that's really cool though. That's awesome. I haven't had that experience yet, but I guess, I've been on cruises and different things like that. You lose cell service and you realize that, okay, things are more important than just your cell phone, and you're able to talk to people. You're able to, and again, that's definitely not the same experience. I'm talking about a cruise versus how you had running water, and it was kind of like that minimalist lifestyle. But that's really cool. That's awesome. That you were able to experience that too. Okay, perfect. So I have another either or question. So would you rather have $500,000 today or $1,000 a week for life?
I'd rather have $500,000 today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Same reason. Invest it, seed capital, get some stuff up off the ground.
Yeah.
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 I have teenage boys, so $1,000. What is it, $1,000 a week or a month?
$1,000 a week. Yeah, $1,000 a week.
My grocery bill's pretty high. Like, that doesn't really come. That just barely scratch the surface of having kids. And,
I tell you what, the popular one has been $1,000 a week.
Really?
The popular one has been $1,000 a week.
Well, I guess because that would set, in many people's case, it would be set you free. Right? Because that's right. That's
correct.
About $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And also too, I think you probably already have the monthly cash flow. So, and I think probably the average person that I ask a lot of times, it's just random people on the street. They may not have that already.
Sure,
they may
of
not
course.
have that cash flow of $1,000, and I'm definitely nowhere near you. But I'm get cash flow obviously a month, and I think you. Listen, I'm the same way with $500,000. I know exactly what I would do with that, money. I'm kind of in the duplex mindset of, okay, this is how many, duplexes I can buy with that,
Sure.
And that'll, definitely, give me a little bit more money than $1,000 a week. So it is interesting to get different perspectives on that.
Well, the cool thing about that perspective of the people that are on that $1,000 a week is, when I tell people, people have income goals, or people are like, oh, I have to make X. If you break it down like that, $1,000 a week it's not that much money. Right? If you're trying to figure out an income stream, and you can break it down from oh God, I don't have to make $50,000 a year.
Yeah. I
need to make $1,000 a week.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
And that amount kind of sets me free. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I don't know. It's interesting to break it down like that.
Yeah. Okay. What has been your biggest setback?
Oh boy. I think it's people, right? It's people power. It's trying to align with the right people, and it's just a shortage of, maybe we're in the wrong market, but it's just such a challenge to find people who are committed, who are aligned with kind of my vision, who are reliable.
Yes.
I feel like I could accomplish so much with just a legion of really capable people around me. And I think that's probably been the biggest setback.
Nice. And obviously I'm in the real estate space with you. And I think sometimes people forget, right, that obviously we have feelings, we have, how do I say this? We're people too. And sometimes it is difficult, right? Because, you wear a lot of different hats as an investor, as a realtor, as a landlord, as a property manager, and when you wear so many different hats, you're trying to please so many different people.
Sure.
And it's impossible, obviously, to please everyone, so I'm sure you probably ran into the issue of, you have contractors, unfortunately, who just aren't doing what they say they're going to do. Take a little bit longer than what they said they're going to do. You bend over backwards probably for tenants, right? And you give them, maybe more than you would, or give them a longer leash than you would, but it kind of comes back to, bite you. And, and it's an everyday life, right? I think, too, one thing that I always kind of say as a landlord is, first interaction I have with my tenants is, listen, do not mistake the kindness for a weakness. I will try to be the best landlord as possible, but the minute that you mistake that as a weakness and you try to exploit that, kindness, that's when we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that in life as well too, because I think once people realize, like, okay, this person is nice, this person is caring, because I'm not saying the average person isn't, but it is hard to find nice, caring people, in this world today. But when people realize that, unfortunately, sometimes they like to exploit that, from you. I know I've, had firsthand of that.
I've had a lot of it as well. Yeah, especially as a woman in the industry. I feel like I've had my fair share of that. And I'm like, how do I continue to be a nice, caring person,
Yes.
amidst,
Yes.
An environment where a lot of people, they take advantage. So.
Yeah, and to kind of segue, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but just kind of being a woman and kind of, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, but a woman in this obviously the real estate industry, quote unquote, is, I guess there's a lot more men in it than women, and what I mean the real estate industry, more of the investment industry.
Side. Yeah.
You want to kind of maybe talk about that, just as far as how you're able to kind of overcome that hurdle, and again, like what drives you and what motivates you to be the best version of yourself.
Sure. So that's kind of been a transformational process as well. I think when I got started, I was really intimidated,
Mm-hmm.
and I did my best to hide that intimidation,
Mm-hmm.
but I can remember being in rooms full of people and they'd be using like acronyms and
Mm-hmm.
like financial models, and
Mm-hmm.
like I had this inner dialogue. I'm like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm gonna understand this, So like I went through that phase of just being really intimidated and having a little bit of imposter syndrome. And then I would say the next phase was like trying to prove myself, because especially like when I got into buying multifamily, I'd show up to look at a building, and in many cases, I'm not saying this is always the case, but in many cases, the owners of those buildings had, there's like a generational sale,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were men
Mm-hmm.
in their 60s, 70s,
Mm-hmm.
80s
Mm-hmm.
who just come from a different time, and I'd show up because I wanted to look at the building as a potential acquisition, and they were like, are you the realtor? No, I'm not the realtor. I'm the buyer. Well, when is your husband showing up?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't have one of those.
Yeah.
You know? So there was like this time in my career where I was constantly having to prove myself of like who I was, my capabilities, and I think I took on kind of more masculine tendencies at that time, And interestingly enough, like where I am now and where I really hope to see the future of like just entrepreneurialism, business life, whether it be, real estate investing or whatever, is that women can bring both sides of their personalities or polarities into that, right? Because there's a lot of power in feminine energy. Like we're really intuitive generally, very intuitive, great communicators. We know how to foster relationships.
Yes.
We know how to build people up. We're trustworthy. Those are just not characteristics that you hear a lot about men.
Exactly.
No offense.
Nah.
But, on the other side, I think that there are a lot of women that are doing what I'm doing, or they're in other realms, that they have to be very analytical and extremely decisive and, pretty powerful and extra self-motivated. And I think it's an interesting thing when you are not trying to abandon one side for the other and you bring both of those together. And that's kind of where I am now. And I've found that it's not only has it worked really well for me, like it's been really impactful, but it's also where I'm most comfortable. Because I'm not having to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. And that's kind of my whole spiel on being a woman in a male-dominated industry, and what that kind of come up has been like.
No, that's good, and it's you definitely touched on, sometimes, especially as a new person getting into, real estate, and even as a realtor, right? A lot of realtors say, well, it's hard for me to break in because, when I go to listing appointments, I go up against, other agents who are doing, 30, 40, 50, 60 deals, a year, and I've only done a couple. And I'm like, well, look at the positives of that, right? Like you're able to focus all of your energy on that one listing,
Right.
versus, if you are somebody who has a lot of listings, right, you're not able to focus all of your energy on that one listing. You kind of spread it out. And I mean, you can literally do an open house every, couple days, right? And
not that you want to volunteer to do
exactly,
that.
right? And then it's want to
Go
volunteer,
crazy.
but it's something that you can do, and it's cool too. It sounds like your mindset shifted, at a point where you're like, hey, listen, and I always kind of use this analogy, when I speak to people, but I firmly believe that any building that I walk into, I'm the hardest working person in the room. Now, is that honestly the case? Maybe not. But I believe it.
Exactly.
And it sounds like with you, going into, looking at buildings and talking to, men who, maybe don't share the same, respect or look at you differently, you knew like, hey, listen, I either am going to be, better than you or my work ethic, I know is crazy work ethic, but it sounds like you kind of self-motivated yourself and you taught your mind to believe anywhere that I go, I number one, add value, and B, like I'm not this person that you guys are portraying me to be.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that I just hear like all these people squawking on the internet, and it's just so interesting because it's like alpha this and alpha that, and then they like demonize women that are kind of in a I hate the word alpha, but they're in a more alpha role, and then they assign all these attributes to you.
Yeah.
Like you must be bossy, you must be bitchy, you must be. No, I don't think that that's the case, and I think that women have a unique ability to bring both sides of those energies to the table, and when you figure that balance out, it's pretty cool.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome, and thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. Okay, so we're kind of getting towards the end here, but this is more of a hypothetical. If you lost everything today, what would be your plan B?
Oh wow! So I can't be doing real estate?
It's not that you can't do real estate. It's more of you just had a crazy setback. You lost everything in life. Maybe the house, the cars, and I guess more of how would you start over? What would be your plan if you had to start over?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to do that throughout my career, right? I've had like years where I've had huge losses and major setbacks, and I mean, for me, like real estate investing is always the path. That's what I know best.
Yeah.
And now I know and leverage so many models. So I guess I would start with like the path of least resistance, and I would just probably start amassing buy and hold again.
Okay.
And but I'd have to stick with real estate. I tell everybody, like, if I didn't have it, I don't know what I would do, because I really don't know how to do anything else.
No, it makes sense. You got to stick with what you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like being a professional baseball player, right? I'm gonna start over, right? We're gonna try to play hockey. It's like, obviously, it's why would you do that? Just pick back up with what you know best. And you kind of touched on it, as well too, as far as just losing everything and actually this is more of a question, because as a landlord, and I'm doing some fix and flip stuff too, can you kind of talk about, because the budget isn't always what you think it's going to be. Can you kind of talk about your mindset with, like, okay, your contractor calls you and says, hey, we have to spend an extra $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. How long do you dwell on that? And, what is your mindset with, like, okay, I'm just going to put this past me. You kind of talk, because I think it's interesting, because the average person just, sometimes doesn't think that way, right? Like if you're going to make $1,000, transaction, a lot of people have time, to think about that and mentally prepare for that. But in real estate, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's a phone call and you have to make that split-second decision right then and there, saying, hey, we have to replace the pipes, or, hey, we have to snake the drain, we have to do this or do that. Can you kind of talk about, how you just either, move on from that or how you handle that, those objectives.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
You want me to talk about construction? I truly, like I say this, like real estate investing, I'm a real estate investor. It sounds sexy.
Uh-huh.
Saying you're in construction does not sound sexy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in reality, in 90% of cases, if you're a real estate investor, you're also in construction.
Facts.
And if you don't understand that side of the business, I would say stop what you're doing and learn that side of the business. Because I can tell you firsthand, I say this too, you make money on the buy, you either retain it or lose it in the middle. And the middle is where the construction is. And you better understand the due diligence, estimating, financing it, working with contractors, how not to get ripped off, how to handle change orders, because it'll eat you alive.
Yeah.
And you know that. Like if you're not budgeted properly, listen, I have 42 houses under construction right now.
Wow.
So if you have a change order on, a quarter of those,
wow,
it's a lot of money.
Wow.
And so I have made so many mistakes when it comes to construction, hiring the wrong people, not having the right contracts, letting the contractor dictate a scope of work, not really troubleshooting a change order. Like someone, like we were talking on the way up here, about, like, oh, this water tank blew, it's going to be $3,000. What?
Yeah.
So how do I handle it? Every time I go through like the next painful experience, I try to put a plan of action in place that will prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
And I put a lot more time into the preparation phase than I ever did. Because when you're a real estate investor, it's like ready, fire, aim.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's
right.
like two guns, cowboy style.
Yeah.
Like, I want this deal. I want this deal. And it's so easy to skip over the due diligence part of it.
True.
And the preparation part of it. But that's basically what I do. And I've had it happen so many times. Every time it happens, I kind of track like what went wrong.
Yeah.
So that the next time I can't repeat that mistake.
Yeah.
And I figure I'm like, mistake 1,000 now. So I've got to be pretty close to having addressed all of that. I don't know.
And I know we kind of talked about it too, just as far as like, hey, with the studio and the podcast, and like, what's, how did you get everything set up? It's like, listen, I just would you say ready, fire, aim? Yeah, and that's it, right? Like it's either going to work or it's not, and I'll figure it out as I go. And I think that's kind of the thing with real estate investing. I tell what I say is real estate investing is great, but it's not for everyone. And you have to have that just mindset. It's a different mindset, right? You have to be very, very, very thick-skinned because things are going to go wrong. And like I said, you may wake up and like, I have to run to Home Depot and $2,500 I didn't account for, for today. And to the average person, right, like $2,500 is a lot of money. Yeah, you can do a lot with $2,500. Okay, boom, you wiped out all your credit card debt. But from an investor's, mindset, it's just the cost of doing business. Right. And if you try to cut corners, trust me, it'll show. And your reputation in this industry is just so important. And especially today with our society, with social media and videos, and unfortunately, like it doesn't necessarily have to be true, right? I mean, people can say anything about me or you or anything like that, and let's put that information out there, and we'll fact check it later.
Yeah.
And that's tough, but it's really cool for you to kind of talk about that aspect of and I stress that a lot because I'm sure a lot of people ask you all the time, hey, how do I get started?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, number one, just get started. I always kind of say educate yourself, but number two, just understand, like mentally prepare, because it's, it's like the social media aspect of, we put our best photos out on Instagram. We talk about our wins, the podcast studio, and it's, this is great setup, but like people don't understand. It took me, I was supposed to do this 3 months ago. A lot of people don't know that, but like, I should have had this done 3 months ago. I should be at podcast, number 15 right now. But it's important for people to understand, like, it's not going to happen overnight, and just really understand that, like, it does take a lot of time and effort and energy. And like you said, thousands and thousands of flips, and you're still making mistakes.
That's right.
Um,
But I mean, everyone says this, and it's true. It's not a mistake. It's a learning curve.
correct.
They're lessons, and you use that to propel you forward. And how else are you going to learn?
Exactly. No, very true. No, very, very true. And it's like the analogy that I like to say is you can read a book for, study on how to swim for 10 years. Somebody throws you into the ocean, you drown, right? It's the same exact thing with life,
Right.
Even as a real estate agent, right? I mean, they teach us, you go through school and boom, I have my real estate license. Then you go through your first transaction, it's like, what is happening? Like, what is actually happening right now? Like, this is like so different than what they taught us in school. And like, here's your here's a contract. It's like, I don't even know how to fill this out. Like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this. And people are asking about, okay, well, the plumbing. What do you think about the plumbing? What do you think about the electrical? It's like, they didn't teach me any of this at school, right? So it's kind of going through the motions and being,
baptism by fire.
That's it. No, that's it. Yeah, you're really thrown into the lion's den, I'd say, and you got to figure out a way to survive. So okay, perfect. All right. Well, so I'll wrap it up here with last question. So, what life advice would you give for anybody younger who's watching, or your younger self? Actually, make that a two-part question. What life advice do you have for your younger self, and what life advice do you have for anybody younger who's watching, male, female, anything like that?
Okay. So my younger self. So when I was younger, I would have considered myself a little bit of a rebel. Like,
okay.
you couldn't tell me what to do. My poor parents, when I was a teenager, I was a little reckless, and I at that time in my life, I remember thinking like there was something wrong with me, right? Because I wasn't a rule follower, and I didn't want to be controlled in any way, and I just didn't, the textbook kind of education wasn't for me. I made my way through high school, made my way through college, but I was never like a great student.
Yeah.
And so, I had this story that I was telling myself that like I wasn't good enough, or, all this. And like later on in life, I realized that was, I was born an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And my inability to be controlled and my inability to learn in that fashion didn't mean that there was anything wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right? These were my unique traits and abilities that would ultimately end up applying to something that would put me where I am today.
Yeah.
So I think what I would have told my younger self is, not to judge myself according to certain societal norms or expectations of people who had a limited vision of who I was. And I would say the same thing to any young person, like, and especially now, I hate it for the kids now because of social media. At least when I was growing up, it's like, well, you had what you thought your parents wanted you to be, and your teachers and your friends. And now it's like, you're constantly being bombarded with these images of like what you're supposed to look like, what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, if you're not like 18 and in a Ferrari, like there's something wrong with you.
Exactly.
And so I think it's just trusting your path, trusting that who you are is enough, and that you just have to tap into what that unique ability is and what brings you alive, and then follow along that path, and don't let anybody else's like projections or judgments alter how you feel about yourself.
Nice. So you hit it right on the head. I think that's very good points. And really understand the message that you were saying as far as don't live your life for other people. I think a lot of times we go into a profession because our parents want us to, or our friends want us to, and no, I think we all have different paths in life, and people are having kids in their mid-30s, people are changing careers in their 50s and 60s, right? One thing that somebody told me, like, there's no such thing as the right way to do life.
Agree.
There's no such thing as okay, but you need to do this and you need to do that. I mean, again, it's just, I think, enjoy this journey as much as you can, and whatever works for you, regardless of other people's, lives, just do whatever works for you. And I'm at a unique point, I'm, 33 and I don't, no kids or anything like that. And hopefully one day that'll happen. But, just talking to a close friend of mine, he even shared with me, like, listen, don't focus on, that, don't focus on you don't have what other people have.
That's right.
Because he's like, you would be very surprised that a lot of people would kill to be in the position that you're in.
You're great.
And I never really thought about that, and I kind of took a step back and I'm like, wow, okay, that's a good point, because we focus on like the good of everyone else's life, and we don't really focus on the good that's happening in our life. And thank you for bringing that up, and you touched on too just about the whole aspect of your accomplishments and kind of minimizing those accomplishments. And yeah, like sometimes you do have to take a step back and realize like, wow, what I've accomplished is actually a lot. I kind of talk about it to some, people too, when I have that, real estate networking event that I do, and I'll tell people, yeah, I do own 10 units, and people's eyes light up like, oh my God, you own 10 units. And to me, it's small because, I try to hang around people like you and people like Noop and people who are very high level successful people. So I think that's really interesting that you say that about the, don't compare yourself to other people.
Oh yeah, I mean, what do they say? Like, if you had an opportunity to trade lives with somebody else, like, you'd probably want your own life back. Like,
yeah.
Right away, because
yeah.
You really don't understand. You really don't know. Even people that are really successful, like, you don't know what they've gone through in their life
Yes.
or what they're about to go through.
Exactly.
Right? We're just like all walking our own unique path, and we have our own journey. And so you just have to be thankful that you're in yours and that you're open to what's to come.
Yeah, nice. No, very nice. Well, I want to thank you. And if anybody wanted to, follow you on any social media platforms, did you want to shout out your,
No, it's
Instagram?
just my name and my last name is.
So if you don't
It's
mind
hard to
spelling that,
forget.
yeah, you don't mind
It's
spelling that.
Stumphauzer. It's yeah, I don't want to spell it.
Okay, no
I'm
worries.
sure if you Google me, you can find me.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll have to, tag you in it. But,
Okay.
again, I can't thank you enough. And I
Mhm.
guess, did you have any last messages or anything like that you wanted to leave us with?
I just want to congratulate you for taking this step. I think it's really awesome, and I'm honored to be guest number 2, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And maybe one day we'll be watching you on like Discovery. You'll be in your van and you'll be interviewing people all over the country, and I can say, hey, I was the second guest.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you and wish you good luck.
Thank you. I'll need it. Technically, you were the first. I
okay.
technically was my first guest.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you were the first. But no, I appreciate that. And one thing, I'm excited about, and I kind of talked to in my first podcast, is I'm not excited about the destination. I'm excited about the journey.
That's it.
And that's what really motivates me. It's not the end result. It's how I got to the end result. And I'm not, again, I'm nowhere near, where I want to be, but, I use the analogy of, okay, you have little milestones in your life, where it's like, okay, I have $1,000, in my account, boom, I could go buy this and be fine, then, okay, I have this amount, I can go buy this and be fine. The analogy I used was, okay, I could possibly, I don't know, but, afford the most expensive thing at Walmart. But, as you get to those milestones, you realize like, okay, that doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm able to afford it, because you're always wanting just a little bit more, and you're always wanting that next little thing. And hopefully, soon or in the next couple of years, I do hit that 20,000 passive a month. And it's like, well, then what are you going to do? It's like, I don't know, I've talked about, I'm a big hockey guy and coaching hockey and being involved in hockey. So I'm excited for that aspect. To, who knows, maybe buy an ice rink, maybe focus, growing the sport is kind of been a passion of mine.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I know that about you.
Yeah, so I played in college, and I went to Leary Catholic and
I
played
didn't know
there.
that either. That's my neck of the woods. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, the Lorain County. I at holidays I don't make it out there too often.
Okay.
Really just on holidays. But yeah, I enjoy that, and just kind of showing people those roots. I don't talk about it a lot as far as, you know, where I'm from. I'm definitely not ashamed, you know, to you know, be where I'm from, but I definitely don't talk about it a lot. And a lot of this with this podcast, I want people to understand, right? Like, you know, I'm from Elyria, Ohio, right?
I'm from Lorain, Ohio.
See, there we
And
go.
by the way, just as a segue, I know you're trying to wrap it up, but there was a time I was ashamed of that too.
Yeah.
But now I'm like so grateful for
Yeah.
it, because I grew up in a blue collar town, and at least at that point in time, it was kind of gritty. And I'm so glad, because man, I mean, came out of there with like a little bit of thick skin.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's helped me in my career. So like everything that happens in your life is very intentional.
Yes.
If you recognize it for what it is, and
True.
it really like sets you on your path. And so
very true. That's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were from Lorain. I thought, okay.
Well, I live in Amherst now.
Okay,
I like to joke that I'm from LA, Lorain, Amherst area.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one either. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I had no idea, but no, that's cool. And I mean, people who don't know, you know, like Lorain and Elyria, they butt up next to each other. But yeah, I mean, you know, there are areas in both cities, you know, that just, you know, don't have a lot of money and you know,
low income, higher crime.
Yes.
Not a lot of opportunity.
Correct. And yeah, you don't really, you know, and I don't want to go down this path, but yeah, you don't really see, you know, a lot of people still live there, you know, who I, you know, went to, you know, school with. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, it's just, you know, a lot of people don't leave, you know, that area and, you know, for choice and whatnot. But yeah, it is, you know, high crime and high income and whatnot. And you don't really hear too often, hey, this, you know, person who has, you know, achieved this high level of, you know, whatever, you know, is from there. Because you know, sometimes it is a mindset, right? I mean, you know, just unfortunately, I went to school with people who, you know, aren't with us anymore for, you know, a multitude of reasons. You know, I, you know, went to Elyria Catholic, but, you know, I went to public schools. So Elyria Catholic is a private school. I went to public schools up until, you know, 8th grade. And I mean, it's different, but you know, like you said, I'm so grateful that I am from there, you know, because I think it gave me that blueprint and that, you know, and that's my motivation too, is to, you know, hopefully give the same opportunities, you know, to kids in Elyria and just let them know, hey, listen, I'm from Elyria, right? Like I'm I'm no different. My path was no different. You know, yes, I was able to go to, you know, Elyria Catholic, but you know, again, I don't use that as a crutch to say, okay, well, this is why you're here, because you were able to do this. It's like, no, listen, I grew up with essentially the same opportunities as you, and you know, I just didn't have a plan B. You know, a lot of people talk about going to college and what if it doesn't work out. There was no such thing as if college doesn't work out for me. You know, I had to make it work out because I didn't have any other option. I didn't have a fallback, okay, I'm gonna go to my dad's business. You know, I didn't have a, you know, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, you know, I have this trust fund to come back. There's nothing, you know, there was no other plan B. So yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, I think it's telling us we got to wrap it up.
Oh.
So. But, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And yeah, make sure, thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and it was fun. So, all right, well, thank you guys for making it this far, and I will see you guys next time.